Hey guys, Coach Carrillo here. I'm wearing my athletic shirt here. I'm about to go and hit some weights, but I am pausing before I do that to bring you a lesson that you will need to make sure you constantly review throughout the semester. We are going to create a tool that you use in class for a grade, sometimes by yourself, sometimes collectively, always on tests. So you do need to put your information here. So go ahead and put your last name, first initial, and then write the name of the course. So Philosophy 1301, or if you're in my ethics class, Philosophy 2306. And then put the days that we meet. So Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. And that's all you have to do. All right, so don't forget that a hard copy is due before or by the time class officially starts. As I will have mentioned in class, if you're worried about not getting to class on time or not making it to class at all, and you want full credit for this, you do get credit for submitting it online, but you get more credit when you bring it to class with you to use. You can always submit this early. You can slide it under my office door. That would be one thing that you can do, or give it to me directly if I'm in my office. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is argument iteration, so of course the core concept here is named by the word argument. As you can see, I've started the document with a concept triangle for the word statement. Remember that a statement, and you were given definitions of statement in your reading. This is the definition that we are going to say is the official definition for this class. We're going to say that a statement is a declarative sentence that asserts something is actual or probable, or that something is not actual or not probable. When you think about actual, you can think about true. When you think about not actual, you can think about false. And of course, with probable, you can think of likely. And not probable, you can think of unlikely. Okay, and remember that it's a sentence that asserts something. It makes a claim about something. It asserts that some states of affairs is the case or is not the case. And so is the case you can think of as true, and then not the case as false. And so, of course, you were given some examples of statements in readings. You have statements everywhere. Your textbooks are full of statements. I make a lot of statements in class and whatnot. But just to give you a sense of variety, I thought I would list some examples here out here. This also helps to iterate and make sure that you are 100% clear in your mind as to what a statement is. So there is a triangle on this document. Fits the definition and the clarifications that we have for the definition up here. There are no triangles on this document. So this is an assertion, and we can, in theory, classify this as true or false. It just so happens that we can look at the page and clarify that this is actually true. This is also a statement, because in theory it can be classified as true or false. It just so happens that this one happens to be false. So of course statements can be true or false. And here's a really important point to keep in mind. We might not in the moment be able to clarify or say for sure that a statement is true or false, but that's not what makes a statement a statement. What makes a statement is that in theory it is the kind of expression that can be classified as true or false. There is a heart on this document, okay? And there isn't, but that doesn't make it not a statement, the fact that it's false. You are hungry. Is that making an assertion about someone's reality? Yes, it's making an assertion about you or some person, right? So it might be about someone else's physiological state, but it still is, in theory, something that we can classify as true or false. We can ask the person that the statement is about whether this is true or false about them. I like strawberries, also a statement. It's making an assertion about someone's preference. Some people will say, isn't that just an opinion? No, this is not just an opinion. I mean, it might be an opinion, but opinions are more often than not presented in the form of statements. So this is a statement. We might not know for sure whether it's true or false, It might be about someone's physiological preferences, but it's still a statement. Abortion is wrong. This is really important because, again, somebody will say, well, that's just opinion. Again, opinions are usually stated in the form of a statement. So remember, guys, remember, you got to keep in mind that when we're classifying and using concepts in class, you got to make sure you're using the definition. Train your brain to use the definition that's given in a lesson, and don't forget the definition. So sometimes what students will do is I'll give them an activity and I'll say, okay, which of these items count as a statement? And I won't have a concept triangle or whatnot. And sometimes students will tell me things like these three don't count as statements. And I think part of the problem is they forget to look back at the definition, or they haven't really internalized the definition for one reason or another. Okay, so yeah, abortion, you might say that's relative or subjective, so are opinions. This is still an example of a statement. We might not ever agree on whether it's true or false, but we can. This is the kind of expression that we can argue about in terms of being true or false. And then for the last example, I want you to write the following. If you are taking a philosophy class, and write small, okay? If you are taking a philosophy class, and then put a comma is a must. Then, and by the way, don't go past, you can do a squiggly line right here, don't go past here, okay, because we need room up here. Then you are learning to think critically. Okay. Now, I wanted us to write this statement out because I really want to make sure you encode it. A lot of students struggle to fully grasp the nature of this kind of statement and what you have to remember to do correct analysis of some arguments. Notice the word if, underline that. Notice the word then. In terms of logic and this class and argument analysis, this is not two statements. It is only one statement. It is called a conditional statement. As you can see here, I have a little text box for so that I can emphasize and so that we can keep in mind the nature of conditional statements. So this is like a subcategory. This is not it is a new concept, but it's a concept that falls under statement. So you see the word statement, right? So this is a special kind of statement, and you can put here see example 7 for statement. I can promise you that in every test that you take this semester, you will have an argument with at least one conditional statement. And your ability to grasp this and internalize it will make a difference as to whether or not you properly and accurately analyze an argument with a conditional statement in it. So here are the things that we need to keep in mind. Conditional statements have this as a standard form. They begin with an if, and then they have some idea X, and then they have a then, and then they have some idea Y. The variation of the standard form, sometimes you'll see it expressed as if X, Y, where the then is understood. Draw an arrow here, and I want you to write then part is, and then right here I want you to write understood. Remember, you can pause this video, rewind me, and whatnot. They are merely hypothetical. So let's go back to this part right here. So there's the if and then, it's the standard form. And then it's not saying someone is taking a philosophy class. That's very different from saying if you're taking philosophy class versus you are taking a philosophy class. This statement is saying something more. It's a hypothetical. It's not just saying you are learning to think critically, and it's not saying then you are learning to think critically. That would be a sentence fragment. This would be a sentence fragment, okay? The whole thing, it's saying if one thing turns out to be true, then something else is also true. It's saying two things are true at the same time. So long as this is true, this will also be true at the same time. They are merely hypothetical statements. It is a single statement. I want you to underline single statement, but it has what? Two parts that underline, and don't underline the whole sentence. We're underlining important segments. Single statement, two parts that work together. So you should have three separate underlines. To see what happens when assuming something is true. You know what? This is not, let's put a square. I don't want you to circle this, and you'll understand why later. So draw a rectangle, I should say. Draw a rectangle around that, okay? And then notice what it says, to see what happens. So let's do a wavy line under that. To see what happens when we assume something is true. So the if part in a conditional statement is the part that says, let's assume this is true. What else will be true at the same time? Okay, so the assuming part, and I want you to put is the if part. Okay. So let's assume someone is taking a philosophy class. What will also be true at the same time? What happens? What also is the case? Okay. All right. Warnings. I want you to put exclamation marks. The if part is not a premise. Put a rectangle around that. The if part is not a premise. So do that. The then part is not a conclusion. So see if you can squeeze a little arrow to go like that. It's not a conclusion. You put a rectangle around that too. The then part is not a conclusion. Never, guys, never, please, please. I'm not trying to be mean or condescending. Like, I'm begging you, please, as your coach. I wish the best for you. So I'm doing this to emphasize a point. Never tell me this is compromised of two statements. When I say this, I am talking about the conditional statement, okay? Never tell me a conditional statement and if-then statement is comprised of two statements. If you're saying this is a statement, this is a statement, you destroy the hypothetical, meaning you destroy the conditional statement. Never. These two connect. If you think there's two statements, then you're going to try to tell me this is a premise or a conclusion, but that's not the case. Never chop up a conditional statement when analyzing an argument. Okay, now, I believe there's one other thing I'd like to iterate. While I haven't conducted any iterations in terms of what is a premise or what is a conclusion, you've already done a reading on what is a premise or conclusion, and I will make my own iterations about that. But for right now, I want you to add another bullet point, and I want you to put a conditional statement. So sometimes I'll use CS to mean conditional statement. A conditional statement can be a premise or let's put a conditional statement as a whole to emphasize that point, right? Can be a premise or a conclusion. Okay. So remember, when you're labeling an if-then statement, you are labeling the whole thing, the if and the then, even if the then part's understood. So there is not both a premise and a conclusion in a conditional statement. The whole conditional statement is either a premise or a conclusion if said conditional statement has a logical role to play in the argument.